Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Winter Forum. Many of you have joined us in Florida and Palm Springs in past years for this event, and we miss seeing all of you in person. But going virtual does have the benefits of making this traditional Grand Valley Foundation Forum available to a wider group of donors this year, and we are excited to welcome many more people today. I'd like to thank Jim and Donna Brooks and Dan and Pamela DeVos for their ongoing support and leadership of the foundation. It's been an interesting year for all of us, and more than ever, we appreciate their counsel and their ideas. I'd also like to thank our friends at Fifth Third Private Bank for once again sponsoring this event. They are represented by Susan Vogel Vanderson, their managing director. Susan, thank you for joining us. Fifth Third has been a valued corporate partner with Grand Valley for most of our history, and we are pleased that we can bring you interesting and informative speaker lineups each year with their help. So now let's do a little housekeeping. One of the things that has come out of this year, for better or for worse, is that most of us are Zoom friendly. We have gotten used to these types of events and meetings. But just as a reminder, here are some things that you need to know for this meeting. Each speaker will have some time to take questions. If you have a question, please submit it below where you see the Q&A icon. If you don't get to your question during this forum, we will follow up with you. We'll communicate with you via the chat if there is information that you need to know, such as the link to closed captioning, which has been posted there. Otherwise, the chat isn't active for this event. Your video and sound are not on today, so we can't see you or hear you, but you are able to see and hear each of our speakers. If you are having technical difficulties, feel free to contact us with the information sent to you this morning in your email. I hope this is helpful. Now let's get started. We have, as always, a terrific lineup of speakers for our forum this year. I'd like to thank Kerry Becker, Jill Wolfe, and Henry Matthews for joining us today. They each have interesting things to share, and we're going to cover a lot of information today in our lightning round of topics. And President Mantella will lead off our speakers today with a look at the state of the university in these interesting times, and a look forward to the Grand Valley Strategic Plan in 2025. As I introduce you, I just want to add that President Mantella has been a bold and confident leader in the face of all of these tremendous changes facing universities and higher education today. And Grand Valley continues to be a leading choice for achieving an excellent and purposeful life and career. We couldn't ask for a better leader in this time of Grand Valley's history, and I am grateful for her vision and her innovative spirit. President Mantella.
Thank you, Karen. It's great to be with you all today, and I'm just unhappy that I'm not there. The wind chill is -6 here in lovely Allendale, Michigan, which I'm sure you're all missing right now. We came off an evening of snow, so I'm really missing not being with you in Florida, and those of you who have joined us more broadly given the Zoom opportunity. Let me also add my thanks to Jim and Donna and Pam and Dan and Susan from Fifth Third for all of the commitments to make this happen and make the foundation as successful and forward-looking and committed as you all are. We're so grateful to you. And let me also add my thanks to Karen. All of you, I think by now, are aware that Karen has made the decision to retire at the end of this year. And I'm just so grateful to have come to Grand Valley at a time where Karen was leading this university, a well-seasoned development function, great relationships to help me come to know the university. So Karen, I just want to acknowledge and thank you in front of many, many of your friends here today online. So thank you. Well, Karen's given me 15 minutes to fly through the state of the university, coming through a global pandemic, as well as looking forward. So I will do my very best and leave time for questions to really fly through the highlights. First of all, let's start with our most important feature, and that is our learning. Grand Valley has worked really hard through this pandemic to keep a level of face-to-face learning and co-curricular, extracurricular life present and safe for our students. We all understand that students today are struggling with the ability to take everything virtual, to deal with new modalities, to meet their usual commitments and interests and take them on in the way they do. And we wanted to be here, ready to engage with them any way that we could, as long as it was safe for our community. And we've been successful in doing that. Right now, today, about a third of our instruction is fully online. About a third of our instruction is hybrid, and in that case is predominantly online, but has face-to-face components that are critical and key. And then about a third of our education is face-to-face. Our density on campus is about half of a typical year, but our enrollment has stayed with us through this period. I think they have been grateful in the way that we've engaged them. We've tried to take our Grand Valley DNA across any digital feature, or as well as through our face-to-face engagement. And I think we've been successful at that. Many institutions have struggled with 10 and 15% losses, students stepping away for this pandemic year. Our institution has had a 2.8% loss in enrollment, and we've come through this quite well. We went into the year planning for 7%, again, presuming we could do better than the average. And we were pleased to see that we were largely able to keep our enrollment intact. Our finances at the university, when the pandemic began for all of us, we immediately took steps to create what we called a COVID relief fund. We curtailed our spending. We created some resources for our operating costs to increase, like the extent of testing that we've done to keep our campus community safe. And we immediately launched through our development function support networks, including support for student hardship and the needs that families and students face during the pandemic. I'm pleased to say that our budget is in balance and our reserves have not been utilized. They're at the same level as in the past because of our preparation coming into this year. But our students are struggling mightily. They are struggling with the realities of lost jobs of their family, lost jobs of their own, really the inability to have the financial resources that they've had in the past. We have responded to over 12,000 hardship and special circumstance requests over the course of this year. And like Grand Valley values and student culture, students asked for just what they needed. They were really, really thoughtful about what would get them through. Grand Valley, not only through your support and additional funds that we raised for student hardship, we put 100% of our CARES funds towards student support. Many institutions made different choices, filled some of the operating holes. We worked really hard to keep our costs contained and to fill our own hole so that our CARES funding could go for student support. And I think that's largely what has kept our enrollment intact as well. So that's the state of play. It's not easy. It's been a challenging year. Our community has done extremely well holding together when they're dealing with their own personal stresses, their homeschooling, their own level of illness in the family, and meeting their commitments to Grand Valley. So I would be remiss if I did not thank the community that has made this happen. I have the privilege to lead it, but it is really the community members across Grand Valley that make this happen. I also want to thank my predecessors. We were not in the same situation that many institutions were facing the pandemic, where budgets were stressed and strained. Sure, I'd love to tell you that we had increasing dollars coming from the state and we were awash in cash. That was not the case, but we had healthy reserves. We were balanced and always have been balanced as an institution. We made whatever hard choices we need to throughout the years to keep this university in a healthy place. And that gave us decision space going into the pandemic and throughout it to make good decisions, to care for our people, and to come through this strong. So looking forward, it was, I came to the university July in 2019, and right away, and I shared with you when I was in Florida, both in the year of my appointment and last year, and was it last year or the year before? I don't know. I'm like so confused based on being remote for so long. But when we were together in Florida, I shared with you how important it was that we come to the planning as one university. And from July until February, when we were really dealing pre-pandemic, the university was engaging, I was engaging personally with thousands of faculty, staff, students, and community members to talk about our essence and our opportunities going forward. And I shared that with some of you as we move forward. Today, we faced this past August as a community where we saw ourselves disrupted, living in the present, difficult to stretch our arms and toes into the future, but needing to be sure that we were doing just that to be as strong on the other side of this. The needs have increased for a Grand Valley education. The urgency has increased, and we needed to be ready. So we went out to our university leadership and our community and said, we need to come back to the strategic plan. We need to bring back our engagement. We need to articulate where we're at, and we need to set a process and a course to complete that plan this year, even in a pandemic year. And that's exactly what we're doing. So there is a website, Reach Higher 2025, that I really want to urge you to take a little time with. There you will see the work of our university steering committee, the many people who are working on the strategic plan. You'll see continuous drafts of our mission, vision, and values, and we're just moving into a new articulation of our strategies. And we want your opinion. We want you to weigh in. I wish I was there to have the day with you, but we know on Zoom that we have the hour with you. So let me urge you to go there, submit your comments, reach out to me or to anybody on this call, and let's talk about what we're thinking about for the future. I want to run through really 6 areas just as a very top level of how we're thinking about the plan. The first is this university will continue to thrive. I came to Grand Valley State because I knew it was a special place. I've never been more convinced of how special a place Grand Valley is. And I've never been more convinced on how much the world needs us. High value, high engagement education that cares about equity, cares about people having access and support to realize their full promise. So the first part of our plan, the first theme is to be a top university in drawing the faculty, staff, students, and community partners to our university for our work. The second is to expand our experiences. Those experiences, making them more available. One thing we've learned through the pandemic is there's not one form of delivery of education. We've delivered education in about 12 different forms of face-to-face, hybrid, and online this year. Everyone I talk to has now had an experience with some level of digital education. We've had to take courses apart, put them on new calendars, make them available in new ways. And we need to take that learning into the future because we have the opportunity to personalize education for adults who have different needs, for traditional age students who have different needs, to support our various communities. And we want to expand the access and opportunity to this expanded array of experiences, programs, relevant programs, deeply steeped in liberal education, and make them available in a way that's consumable by those individuals. I'll mention 2 things because we're going to touch on them today. This past week, we introduced the Grand Valley Pledge. We know that some of our families, particularly those who are making $50,000 or less, are going to struggle. And we have pledged to reach their tuition level through our support, our student support, so they can come to Grand Valley tuition free. Those families under 50,000 that are residing in the 6 counties where we exist, in our main campuses and our branch campuses. And we'd like to do more of that. You know that we introduced the Veterans Promise for our active, our enlisted men and women. And we've expanded our digital education for active duty military. And I'm sure that Jill will touch on this. Those are but 2 examples of our deepening commitment to access, affordability, and doing the right thing for our community. We also want to be sure we have resilient graduates. We are working hard to build into our curriculum more digital education, more entrepreneurship, more design thinking, more of the skills that we know as people reimagine their career multiple times, as technology changes their fields, that they can come up and be a continuous learner. And you know, we are also working hard to make lifelong learning a part of the relationship with Grand Valley, supporting our students in a lifelong learning membership and supporting them for their continuous learning needs. And lastly, I will say that we will maintain a growth mindset. I will tell you in plain language, I do not buy that Grand Valley will shrink during the demographic downturn. There is too much to be done. There are adults that need to be served. There are companies that need to reimagine their businesses and recover from the COVID disruption, and we will be standing by them. And that will enable, along with our wonderful traditional student experience on our residential campuses, Grand Valley to thrive into the future. I couldn't end my conversation without telling you where I need you. I need your support in student support. I need your support in supporting our experiments and our innovation. I need your support in bringing forward experiences for our students or enterprises that need support through our education, training, and development. And I need your input into Reach Higher 2025. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, President Mantella, we have a few questions for you. The first one is, what keeps you up at night, and what are you most excited about?
The thing that keeps me up most this night is the stress on our people. I think every day about what they're balancing, and I am humbled by the way in which Grand Valley is at the center of their heart, along with their family, their spouses, their community. And so it keeps me up every night that I'm asking more of them as we confront these circumstances, and able to provide less at the moment. So that's one of the things that that wears on me, and I can't wait till we're in a situation to be able to provide the kinds of celebrations, recognitions, rewards for our people. What I'm most excited about is the same thing that I was excited about when I came to Grand Valley. I often say the work is the same, but the stakes are higher. And I'm excited to get to work on the future. You know, this past month with the vaccination being available and being rolled out, I've just felt a lot more hope and can see the end of this in sight. I've been able to move from, you know, stretching that arm and leg into the future to having one foot solidly in the present and one foot solidly in the future. And that really excites me, because Grand Valley is needed. It's wanted by our students and our companies. And I'm just thrilled to get to work every day on that agenda.
Great. You know, with the strategic planning process, do you expect any significant redirection or change in the university's mission, vision, or values?
You know, I would say there isn't a sharp right turn ahead. We are, as I said, we're extremely relevant today. I think it'll be more of a feature of doubling down on what we do well and expanding the way we deliver our education, and a phrase that's sometimes used is unbundling it, so that companies that don't want the full degree but want key competencies or experiences or sponsored research from the institution can do just that. So I think it's about increasing our relevance by being able to look across our educational enterprise at the value we can return to multiple constituents.
And we have time for one more question. And this is, what do you think are the most in-demand skills students must learn for the future? And how has that changed since the pandemic?
Without a doubt, the most in-demand skill is the skill of continuous learning. You know, it's the skill of taking a circumstance not on its face. I know how to do an Excel spreadsheet, or I know how to deliver a presentation, but really taking that skill apart, being able to reflect on it, being able to take the core things that one learns and apply it towards the future. So continuous learning, personal reflection, ability to know what you have and what you need is without a doubt number one. No question, digital skills. Almost every business has become a digital business at some level. And I think the entrepreneurial skills. When I come to that individual capability to learn, that is the foundation of liberal education. It's critical thinking, it's reasoning, it's looking around the corner. So those are the things I think we need to concentrate on moving forward.
Thank you, President Mantella. And I think we're going to move on to our next segment now. So Carrie Becker has been Grand Valley's athletic director since 2016 and has led our athletic teams to championships and through challenges that no one ever saw coming for the world of sports. She has kept the Lakers at the top of Division II athletics, and in addition to her leadership with Grand Valley, Kerry serves on the NCAA membership committee, the Women's Leader in College Sports Board of Governors, and is part of Governor Whitmer's task force on women in sports. She has a great perspective on what has been happening in intercollegiate athletics that I really think you'll find enlightening. Please welcome Kerry Becker.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. I appreciate being here and honored to be a part of this forum, albeit would love to be in Florida. Hopefully I'll get on the docket for future years. I appreciate everybody's time and joining us today to learn a little bit more about what's going on inside of Grand Valley. The transformation of sports. It's been, the word interesting has been used, the word unprecedented has been used. They all are still applicable. Transformation of sport, the game itself has not changed. We're playing the games as they were intended to be played. What has been different in a transformation is the pathway that we've had to take to get here. From March 13th, 2020, the day sports stood still, in my opinion. Our teams were pulled off of the track at the national championships, literally pulled out of the pool at the national championships. Our women's basketball team arrived in Missouri, got off the bus, only to get back on the bus 2 hours later and come home. Fast forward to the next day, when that day came and sports stood still, Grand Valley Athletics did not. We immediately went into the mode of, if we can't do what we want, what can we do? And we looked at it in three ways. We said, what is it that we need to continue to do? What is it that we no longer are doing? And what are the things that we've never had enough time to do, or the project we need to dust off, or something that we need to evaluate and be able to refurbish and make better? And so I challenged my team that way. For our coaches, the one thing that remained constant was recruiting. From that day forward, they continued to recruit student athletes and continue to, and I think we'll gain some advantages by doing that, as we see in the 21-22 season. The other thing they went into was a mode of student athlete engagement. Like all of the students, their educational experience and certainly their athletic experience was up, and their social experience was upended in just a matter of days. And so it was important for us to engage our student athletes in a different way. Enter Zoom, and then the way that we use Zoom to stay connected. and in different ways, whether it was every other day, every week. And then we just needed to check in with them. One, make sure they finished the year strong with this new remote learning. And then we could shift to what was next. Enter the summer. The summer went through a process of paying attention to the 6 inches in front of your face, to a planning horizon of 2 weeks, which was really pretty long in some cases. We planned, we made decisions, we worked to implement, and we changed. And we kept doing that cycle. That presented some times of fatigue, but one of the things that was certain in our university leadership and President Mantella made a statement that we were going to return to face-to-face learning. That was the first important piece of ensuring that athletics could happen. Without that, athletics was likely going to be off the table. So once our leadership and our campus community set their sights on that, we too set our sights on that next game. We didn't know when it would be, but we knew we had a game scheduled at that point in the summer. We went through the summer of a lot of changes and in and out of playing, not playing. Entered the fall where fall sports were canceled. The NCAA canceled the championships, conferences followed, canceled their seasons, and ultimately was the right thing to do. We entered a time where we then transitioned to just preparing our student athletes to come back for a very different learning experience, athletic experience, and social experience. And so we focused our efforts on that, like most institutions across the country, and continued to try and find ways where we could participate in athletics safely. It was never going to be a COVID-free environment, still isn't a COVID-free environment, but we worked very hard with university support, the support of our medical staff, to make sure that we could provide as safe an environment as possible. We went to these ideas of physically distanced practices. Honestly, the one sport that hasn't changed through all this is golf. Probably golf exploded this summer. So it's a good thing. That's the silver lining, is the golf world is loving everybody that decided to take up golf. But with the rest of our sports, it went into this transition of coming out of the Zoom environment into the physical environment and doing these physically distanced practices, which was fine. But we dealt with the starts and the stops of the fall. We dealt with our teams having positive cases and going into quarantine, not having a whole team to put out. But then we stayed, and that's that lesson in resilience that I think we're all really learning what that really means to be resilient. But we got through the fall, and we continued to move and make progress. When I look back, we truly made progress and got to a place where we were playing 5-on-5 basketball as we know it. And we were playing volleyball and playing football, and we were doing it as safe as possible. That was an important piece of our student athletes' experience that we needed to give them. It was that small win. Our theme went to win the day. How can we win the day? And if that was just being able to practice, that's what our student athletes appreciated. If there's anything that I think happened during this time, is a true appreciation for that privilege of playing athletics, playing sports. And I even think our fans found an appreciation for when they lost it. Even the not so interested in sports fan, or even the slight interest, they even said to me, you know what, I kind of miss sports being on TV. I kind of miss that livelihood that comes to life on Saturday nights in Lovers Stadium. Whether you're a sports fan or not, it was missed. And so I think the transformation is in the appreciation from our student athletes and our fans alike. As I sit here today, we're playing sports. We've had 6 weekends of basketball, track, swimming. We're getting ready this weekend. Volleyball will play our fall sports. Football will play a couple joint practices, if you will. Volleyball will play a season. Soccer will play a season. We're getting ready to play 18 of our 20 sports between January and May. And so we're playing sports. Our student athletes have done a phenomenal job at implementing the mitigation measures on their own. That takes a lot of dedication and commitment. What we learned in the fall is this virus was probably more dedicated and committed than we were. We're starting to turn the tides on them, our formidable opponent, COVID-19, and we had a stretch of 18 days with 0 cases and have had maybe a high of about 3 or 4. And so that's a win. We would love to not have any cases, but that's a win. To date, none of our games have been canceled because our teams had a case. Our men's basketball team lost competitions to Wayne State, but only because they had a positive case. Again, that's the win. That tells me our coaches are doing a phenomenal job and our student athletes are doing a phenomenal job to operate in this environment. And so that's what gives me hope. I think when you look back on these last 300 plus days since athletics stood still, the silver lining is this Zoom environment created a place for connection. There's going to be some things that we can sustain out of that. The coaches did a great job engaging them in a way that they hadn't been able to have enough time before. They brought in speakers and connected with alumni on leadership, financials, financial investment, mentoring, voting. We got our kids out to vote, understood. We got them registered to vote in any state they came from. Inclusion. We did a lot beyond the game. And I think that's important. We always know that they can develop talent leadership through the context of sport. But when you take away that team unity, what were the things that we needed to do? And so we doubled down on those types of things where they can engage that way. The fan experience has certainly changed and transformed. We went from the days of planning football Saturdays and volleyball Saturdays and soccer Friday nights under the lights to figuring out if we were going to have fans. We came to the realization that spectators weren't going to be a part of our plan. Back in June, we had launched the Blue Frame partnership with Blue Frame Technologies with our Grand Valley Sports Network to launch a platform for a pay-per-view, a subscription-based model. Knowing that streaming was a part of the American culture. Everybody on this call is probably paying for Netflix, Hulu, whatever it might be to watch your favorite things. In a lot of ways, Grand Valley was behind and we weren't doing that. That became an important piece to ensure that we had streaming available, not just for a few of our games, but for many of our sports. Right now, we have a 6-camera setup for our track events, unlike anybody else is doing across the country, to make sure that we're delivering the student-athlete experience to the fans as well. The transformation of how we ran college athletics. You've probably seen in the media all of the colleges that are dropping sports. The conversations about the model, the financial model, the sustainability of the Division I model depends on a particular bucket of revenue that was no longer there, not coming in. We did a bit of a pivot as well, and we weren't isolated from those things, but we were in a much better position due to mostly our university leadership and our ability to make some tough decisions and do some cost reduction measures. We did take a hit from our revenue standpoint, about $1 million in lost ticket sales and advertising and sponsorships that affected our overall department operations. The loss of camps, clinics, and tournaments that our teams used to fundraise and help maintain their operations or sustain their operations, that's probably another $1 million that we weren't able to bring in. Yet we remain in a very good position, mostly due to the kindness of our donors and the diligence of our coaches to stay a little bit lean this year without sacrificing the student-athlete experience. So like President Mantella said, you have 1 foot in today and 1 foot in tomorrow. And I have taken that theme a little bit in the same way, and I've talked to our coaches, is we're not limping into 2021-22. We're going to do everything we can. If you can't do what you want, you do what you can to make sure we stand in a place where we're not just, some days you feel like you're surviving the day, but we're going to come out of the week thriving. And if we can come out of each win a little bit each day, we'll come into 21-22 in a position of strength. We're not going to limp into it. That's not how we've prepared. That's not how we're wired. Our competitive juices are in overdrive, making sure that we come out of this tough situation in a better position than our competitors. And that'll give us a chance to be successful. The other thing I think is the transformation of the academic pathway for our student athletes. We saw our spring sports student athletes all get a year of eligibility back, which is a great thing. Then we saw our fall and our winter student athletes, that extension of eligibility being granted to them, regardless of the number of games they play. So that gives our student athletes an opportunity to look at their academic pathway, figure out what makes sense for them. Most of our student athletes are on a course to graduate in 4 years or 4.5 years. And so some of them had to really think about what they wanted to do. Most of our student athletes want to stay and utilize their eligibility. Well, what does that mean for their academic pathway? Some of them, it means a master's degree, and that's fine. You'll see a lot more master's degree being granted to our student athletes because of this extension of eligibility. The other part that I think is the timing is beautiful is the development of these certificate programs where these student athletes, they maybe don't want to pursue a master's right now, but there's some real usable educational classes they can take in those certificates. They're going to help them on the other side of this, instead of just starting another bachelor's degree that they know they won't finish, or getting a minor that they can't quite finish. So these certificate programs are things that the timing has been beautiful with that. And our student athletes are already starting to engage with those types of things and think about those and include those in their academic pathway. Recruiting, the transformation recruiting, our D1 brothers and sisters have been in what's called a dead period. They can't go anywhere. They can't have student athletes on campus prospects. We can. We took full advantage of that. And I think we're going to see the result of that in this coming year, 21-22. The other thing I think that's happened when outside of Grand Valley, and you just think about the landscape of college athletics, is I think we knew Division I was on an unsustainable path. We knew there were some conversations. If you want to read up a little bit on the Knight Commission report about the conversation about separating FBS football from the rest of the NCAA, that's a very interesting piece that the Division I folks are talking about. There's also a lot of conversation about the Alton case that's in the Supreme Court right now surrounding the name, image, likeness. We were all, as the NCAA was supposed to vote on the name, image, likeness in January, due to a Department of Justice conversation with the President Emmer of the president of the NCAA. We paused on that legislation, and so there's a lot around that. Well, most people think that applies only to Division I student athlete. It has impact on Division II and Division III student athletes. The short answer to any question I have about that is we do need some different governance from the NCAA. I do hope it'll be left in the NCAA's hand to create those rules and those guardrails to allow our student athletes to utilize their name, image, likeness in an appropriate way. For instance, the ability for them to, if we have a artist on campus, Henry, this will be a good segue to you later. Artist on campus, that artist can sell their paintings that they paint. Our student athletes would have a problem doing that because of amateurism rules. Or if they play the trumpet, someone could go downtown and play the trumpet and get paid. Our student athletes can't teach pitching lessons and get paid. So there's some things like that this name, image, likeness is important at all levels. So there's a number of things I think in terms of the transformation. But at the end of the day, our goal is to get back to packing these arenas and packing Lovers Stadium on Saturday nights. And I think we'll be in a position to do that based on the support of our leadership, the competitive as our coaches, and the diligence of our student athletes to remain committed to it. So I'll take any questions anybody has.
Well, thanks, Keri. There's one question back to our students. How are coaches really dealing with the mental health of our students that there's so much they've had to change and alter their experience?
You know, I think we launched 4 years ago when I became the AD, Lakers Listen. We educated what's called anchors on every team on mental health skills. We educated them on the resources. We have a adjunct individual that's a limited license counselor that facilitates groups for our student athletes. So we did that a number of years ago, and that program has continued to grow where we have at least one anchor on every team. They're not there to be little therapists, but they're there for the student athletes to talk to their teammate and help them lead them to the resources we have within athletics and on campus. We have an amazing set of resources on campus to help all students with mental health. And we want them to take ownership of that. We don't want them to hide it. It's not a weakness. We changed it and from a stigma, and we turned it upside down, and that it's a strength for you to own the things that you need help with, and let us help you guide and find the resources and do that. And I think that's set us up for fast forward to today. Those mental health resources are far more important when you start to isolate student athletes from their teammates. But they're no different than the student. Our students miss their social piece. They miss their experiences in the classroom. Our student athletes miss those experiences as well in the classroom and getting together. They miss the bus rides. The bus rides look very different. And so you put that on top of some of the things they already come to us with a lot of anxiety and depression. It was important in that we had a good foundation with that Lakers Listen. And so I think if you ask them, they know where the resources are, and that's that's 90% of the battle. They know where the resources are. They know it's a sign of strength to engage those resources, and we hope and we think they're doing that.
Well, thanks, Kerry. We have another question on, can you reflect on the GLIAC? I understand there may be some sensitivities, and it looks like there's some tough issues. How's the conference addressing them, and what about membership?
The GLIAC, the GLIAC, again, COVID revealed a lot of warts across the country, and there's a lot of warts in the GLIAC in terms of the institution's ability to all address this in a uniform manner. But from the first meeting the ADs have had since May, we meet every single Friday. It seemed insurmountable. Would we all be able to get to a place where we were all, say, testing at the same level? And what was that testing? We had to figure out what the testing was, but could we all get to that place with the testing? Because that was going to be the foundation of playing athletics. Anything that came out from the NCAA and certainly the state of Michigan, the health department, it has had some restrictions on athletics. But it evolved, and we got to a place as those things, as I guess more guidance came out from the NCAA and the state, and the cost of testing came down, we got to a place where we do have competitors. So we're in a much better space than we were back in May and June and July. I was concerned, even with sports were happening around us, would we have anybody to compete? But they've all found a way. And so I think, we're going to lose Ashland. I think whoever asked this question is alluding to the membership changes that we'll see. We're going to lose Ashland University to another league. Quite honestly, that's been something in the works for about 3 or 4 years, where they've struggled financially and had to make some tough decisions. And COVID just accelerated that. So it's, when you say sensitive issues, I think it's one of those things where you just keep working through them and figure out how to do what's best for the GLIAC. It's one of those things where ADs have had to set their own issues aside, or their own, looking at it through their lens and what's best for Grand Valley, and say, what's best for our league? Because the important thing was to keep our league strong so that we could go through this together and have a schedule and have somebody to compete with.
Well, thanks, Kerry. I appreciate your joining and being part of this discussion. So we're going to move on to the next topic now. So our next topic is about our students who are veterans and in the military. President Mantella mentioned that we have just received some generous support from the Secchia family to enhance our programming in this area, and we're very grateful. Thank you, Joan. You and Peter have been made such a difference to Grand Valley, and this will be especially gratifying to our students. I'm pleased to introduce Jill Wolfe, who's a Grand Valley alum, and has become our very first Veterans and Military Resource Manager. Jill is a veteran herself, having served in military intelligence for the U.S. Army. She's a lifetime member of the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and the Women's Veterans Alliance. I think you'll enjoy both the information she shares today and her enthusiasm. Please welcome Jill Wolfe.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, everybody that decided to show up today. As he mentioned, I am new in this position. I think I'm still in the honeymoon phase, which means everybody still has to be nice to me. I was hired in July, but today I'm going to talk a little bit about student veterans. And I kind of want to start off first with this sort of idea, the cartoonies that we have of veterans. And when you say the word veterans, like a lot of people sort of have these images that come to mind. It's either the hyper masculine Rambo type. I know sometimes when I hear the word veteran, it's old men in hats. And when you hear student veterans, you can maybe imagine this image of somebody in uniform walking around campus. But that's not really how I experience student veterans here at Grand Valley. And these pictures are a little bit more about how I do experience them. So up at the top there is Mishra. She's a GVSU grad. She's an Army veteran, and she just finished up a stint being the executive director of the Global Women's March. So she's a Grand Valley alum out there doing amazing stuff and a veteran. Right below her are my student peer mentors. So all veterans there, if you notice, 3 of them are female. and they help new student veterans that are coming on campus, gives them kind of a resource or a place to go to when they need help. And then over there on the side, that's Kalen. Kalen's a Navy vet. I believe he's an operations major. And what I love about Kalen is his motto is no closed mouth gets fed, which he learned from his grandmother. And that's really served him well. He asks questions, he seeks out resources. And these are the kind of vets that I love, that are really willing to sort of advocate for themselves. And we worked with the VFW to get Kalen a new laptop for Christmas so he could be prepared to be successful this semester. So I kind of just wanted to take a second to talk a little bit about what the veterans look like at Grand Valley. They are older. I think the average age is around 27, 28. We have about 350 of our students who have actually served. Either they're currently serving in the Michigan National Guard or reserves, or they served active duty before they came to Grand Valley. And then we have about another 350 who are dependents. So they're going to school on their family member's GI Bill. They qualify to do that. Many of them are parents, many of them are married, often to other military members. And so that's kind of cool. They bring their spouses back. A lot of them are first generation students, but basically what these students look like is what President Mantella talked about earlier, is they're adult learners. They've gone out into the world, had an experience, and are coming back and pursuing their degree. And so the one thing they kind of all have in common is that they really, they value education. And I know a lot of people who work in higher education and with certain student populations have their favorite students. And I am no exception, but I would like to say or posit objectively that these students are some of the most incredible students. And that's knowing that they span this wide variety. You know, we have veterans who are students of color, who are student athletes, who are art majors. Like, there's this wide range of student veterans, and and I'll show the data in a minute. That they're objectively some of the best students, and it's been an incredible honor to work with them. On average, they have a higher GPA than their non-military counterparts. They take harder programs or degree programs. Once they graduate, they volunteer more in their communities. They give more back to charity. They run for office in higher numbers. They're just kind of incredible. They've gone through this life experience that has changed them, and they bring that to the classroom, and they bring that to the companies and the nonprofits and the communities where they live and work. And kind of one of the cool things I really like about them is more than half of them have had this whole career in the military, and then they come to school to do something completely different, which I think makes them really well-rounded. But that doesn't mean that they don't have struggles, and they do. They have real struggles. Somebody once called student veterans the non-traditional students of non-traditional students, and I love that phrase. That really describes them pretty well. Making the transition from the military, which is life or death, right? Concrete. We have a plan, we have somebody who's in charge, $1 million weapon systems, working towards a very clear goal. When you move that into higher education, where it can be very esoteric and not really sure what the end goal is, and everything's kind of up to you, and it's very touchy-feely, like that's a really difficult transition for a lot of them to make. In fact, I had just gotten an email probably 2 weeks ago from a student who said, you know, I think it would be easier if I just went back to Afghanistan, where all I had to worry about were my buddies and myself. And it's a real problem to help them through these transitions. And at Grand Valley, we're really working to build mentoring and coaching programs to help them through these transitions and let them know they're not alone. These are totally legitimate feelings, but you know what, you've got this. And all these things kind of these struggles create this imposter syndrome when everyone around them is younger than them. They feel like they've missed out, and the military mindset's just so different. It's really interesting to see this kind of, they feel like they don't belong here. Something that people don't always know about the military, the post 9/11 GI Bill, is that it's only 36 months, and it's not 36 consecutive months, but that means it's 36 months to get through school. And that means they have to pick their major, what they want to do for the rest of their life, make sure all their classes are in order and get through. And that's how much, you know, school covers. So about a third of them end up taking out loans to finish up their degrees. And then finally, once they start getting towards the end, start looking at graduation, a lot of these students have a difficult time with networking. In the military, it's kind of seen as brown nosing. And so it's really up to me and my peers to help them work through that and understand that reaching out and building relationships is really important in the civilian world, and you probably need to start getting used to it. So there has been, in the 6 months that I've been here since July 2020, there's been sort of this metaphorical fire hose of amazing stuff happening with student veterans. And we mentioned it earlier. Certainly the Secchia family has been incredibly generous and has created the opportunity for us to serve these students in a way that's never been done before at Grand Valley, to create those mentoring opportunities, to work with the coaching. And it's more of, ends up being sort of less academic coaching and more life coaching. And just be able to give them the opportunities and the chances to earn that degree and earn a place working in the working world and getting that experience. Along with that donation that we got from the Secchia family, we'll be having a new veteran center downtown, which is very exciting. Like, it's May 1st is like a target, so fingers crossed we get there. But we just opened a new one out here in Allendale. So if you're ever out in Allendale at Kirchhoff Center, stop by, say hello. We'd love to show you around. The Veterans Promise was also mentioned, and for me, we're the only university in the country doing this, and it's the heart and soul of the veterans program, I think, at Grand Valley. What it means is that if you're a high school student and you commit to joining the military and do your part, we've got a space here for you at Grand Valley. We've got a seat at the table. We want you here as a Laker. We recognize the commitment and what that means to join the military, and we're willing to put our money where our mouth is and back that up and give you, resources and a degree in exchange. So President Mantella mentioned leads for veterans. That means veterans can take classes while they're still on active duty wherever they are in the country. That's very exciting. And this has not been publicized, but last week I got the email that Grand Valley has moved up 2 spaces on the military-friendly school spectrum, and we're now silver level. And that is just a testament to all the work that we've been doing over the last year and the last 6 months. And finally, we just have sort of a new focus on how we are going to interact with vets and how we're going to treat vets on campus. So a lot of schools talk about being veteran friendly, and that's great. But at Grand Valley, we really want to be veteran inclusive. And that means partnering with my colleagues here on campus, but also working with VFWs, working with the Michigan Veterans Affairs Administration, working nationally, and really just like having this idea that vets are welcome at the table wherever they go. And then this new mindset where we're not, the silent wounds of war, as we sometimes call it. A lot of veterans organizations want to focus on suicide and PTSD, and certainly we have resources to help our student veterans with that stuff if that's something they need help with, but it's not something that we're focusing on. So new mindset, new focus on Grand Valley, and I'm really quite excited about it. So I'm just going to throw this up here. It's not to overwhelm you. Like, maybe there's a word or two that shows up that sounds interesting, but basically what this is a request for you to reach out to me and brainstorm. I have a ton of ideas. Like, I'm a former entrepreneur, like ideas are my jam. Collaborating is really something I enjoy doing. My students love it too. They love continuing the service that they started. And reaching out into the community and working with other organizations, both on campus, even with other universities, to do some really cool work that promotes what veterans are doing. So there's my number, there's my name. You can also look it up on Grand Valley's website. I am happy to have more conversations with you about what we can do together. Finally, I just kind of wanted to end with this quote, which I actually kind of stole from the Martin Luther King celebration we did last month. And the idea that freedom is won in every generation, it looks different for every generation. It looked different when I was in the military in the 90s. It looks different now in the age of COVID. We've had students who have been deployed to Washington last month, and we've had to work through with their professors and with them to see, like, how can we best accommodate the change that you want to be in the world. These students are amazing. They're incredible. They're going to go out and do, incredible things in this world. I'm running out of adjectives here, and I'm really excited about the future at this university and look forward to working with all of you to continue to forward these students. So thank you for listening, and I'm open to questions. Hopefully that was 10 minutes. So
we got time for one question. And the question is, you have the Veterans Promise. Is that going to be offered to older veterans who are now out in the workforce who are looking to come back and enhance their skills?
So the thing about the Veterans Promise is it really is more of sort of a stake in the sand. It's being very clear about what, we offer veterans to a very specific student population, and honestly to their parents as well, who may be a little concerned about them joining the military and making sure that they have a place afterwards. So in practice, though, we are always open to student veterans coming in, and it's kind of an interesting process. A lot of veterans, I get this call all the time, like, yeah, I didn't really do that good in high school, but I've been serving in the Navy for 8 years. I've learned a ton, and we say, great, fantastic. Put that in your application. We will work with you. And so we're able to work with veterans, regardless of whether they graduated from high school in 2020 or in 1994, like I did. So it's a great program, but more of what it is just an ability for us to say who we are. And like I said, put a stake in the sand.
Thank you, Jill, so much what you do for our veterans and our students and our military enrollees. So many of you are familiar with Henry Matthews. Henry has been with Grand Valley for more than 2 decades. He was a founding director of Grand Valley's Galleries and Collections and has been instrumental in getting our collection to where it is today, the second largest art collection among university colleges in Michigan. Henry's passion for sharing art with our students and the public is contagious, and I know you'll enjoy his presentation today. Henry?
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for including me. So the question is, what role does art play in creating global citizens? And to address this question specifically at GVSU, I'm going to start with my dear old friend, Cyril Lichtenberg. Here are some images of his work. You may be familiar with them when you walk through the campus. The Mackinac sculpture, the sculpture in front of Mackinac on the right, it's called Amaranth, and the print in the center is by him that relates to that. And the painting on the far left is when he was in Van Gogh period, painting a view of Amsterdam. Cyril and I were friends for more than 40 years before he passed. When I first came to Grand Valley in 1999, he, of course, immediately came here, was very interested in what's going on. He loved to be with students. He loved to be with faculty. And one of the first things he wanted to do and did was donate a collection of 300 works of art, his own prints, one of every print that he had made thus far in his career. This was in 1999. And he wanted that to become part of this, this collection that we were about to create and to kickstart it. By the time Cyril passed just a few years ago, we had more than 550 works of art by him in the collection. Cyril was very engaging. He just loved people. He loved everybody. He lived in Amsterdam in one of those fabulous fantasy canal houses on a canal. And he invited everyone who ever came to Amsterdam that had any connection with Grand Valley to come and stop, to have a meal, to see his studios, to meet other artists. And he, many students and faculty indeed did that in the 20-year period that he was engaged with us before he passed. In the next set of slides, I'm going to show you the great spans of our collection. We represent 6 continents in our collection of art, including Australian dream paintings that you see on the far left, when Australian Aboriginal people capture their stories and tell their stories. It's called dreaming. And so this is a dream painting. When they're done with that story, they're done with the painting, and it goes on. We are very fortunate to have quite a number of these works of art. And at one point, we had a collector, Wendy and James Cohen, come from Australia, from Sydney, and shared their collection with us here. It was one of the most popular one of the most popular exhibitions with students when we did that here. And it was, in fact, a collaboration with the Public Museum and with the community. And there were lectures and such, and students were just really taken by these wonderful dreamings. In the center is an example of calligraphy, an example by one of our own professors, Pei Min Ni, a Chinese-born American artist who is a master calligraphy, a scholar, is the classic Chinese a scholar, painter, artist. We've done exhibitions with his work. He, of course, regularly took students to China, and I joined him on several occasions and brought back some art as well. So more examples of art from China. And on the far right, a mask from Haiti brought to us by Professor Alan Adams, who took a group of students to Haiti and brought back an amazing group of works of art that are now part of the permanent collection as well. How do we use art at Grand Valley? What do we do with it, I think, is an important question. And of course, first and foremost, we teach with it. Our faculty simply uses the art around us to teach it. Here is an example of Professor Edwong Ligda, who on the occasion of his retirement had a one-man show in the GVSU Art Gallery in Allendale. And he's surrounded as a surprise by all his former students to embrace him as he went on to his next journey. The paintings behind him are indeed by Professor Edwong Ligda. And on the right, an exhibition several years ago, we were given a very important collection, a fabulous group of works of art from the Padnos family. And we see the dance students, contemporary dance students, our own, reacting to those works of art in the best way, in different ways that they could. And there was also original music made for it and so forth. There was a whole series of exciting happenings and experiences by the students, for the students, in response to artwork that we have. In the next slide, I'll show you that another important part is simply experiencing. We bring students to Grand Valley. In this case, there's a whole group from Korea on the left. They made wonderful art under the supervision of our own faculty. Some of that art then ended up going and being on display at Art Prize downtown at Grand Valley's venue. And then they all, these same pieces went on and are now on display throughout the university, including our brand new Finkelstein Hall downtown as well. And it's also in dorms. And on the right is a student having a close moment with a native and being embraced and having obviously a fabulous time. The photograph was taken by another student. The students then come back from these international experiences and ask to tell their story. And so we help curate the exhibition. The GVSU Art Gallery staff helps with that. And these photographs are then put on display, and we often then acquire them for the permanent collection and have them on view throughout the university to encourage other students to go out and have their own adventures, which hundreds and hundreds, of course, have done on a regular basis. And in the next slide, I'll show you the important thing that we do. We simply live with art. It is literally around us. So this is the Tom and Marsha Haas lobby, and which is really the living room, the study hall of that building. And you can see this blank wall. Anytime I see a blank wall, it is an art opportunity. And so we had simply filled it with art from and by students, faculty, local artists, gifts from important collectors that we have made friends with throughout the country. And these things, they just become part of our environment, and you can't help but notice them after a while. I think it's in a very important way of being exposed to art. We have, you might be surprised to know, 10,000 works of art on view throughout all our facilities at this moment. And on the right, the works that we're not storing, that we're not showing, are actually being stored. This is the great storage hall in downtown Grand Rapids. It's a very secret place, but by appointment, you can see it as well. And we keep the 10,000 works of art that are not on view there as well. And down in the lower picture, there is yours truly with a different bow tie. We have one of the flat tiles open, and it shows one of our Cyril Dixenberg prints. There are over 7 20,000 museum quality works on paper stored there. And these are teaching tools and resources for the faculty and students, and anyone can have access to them who is at all interested in them. Let me take you to the next image, because I don't know if you've ever been or if you've never been to our GVSU Art Gallery website. I wanted to show you what it looks like if you go there. On the far left is the home page where you can click on and learn about exhibitions, programs, the faculty, the collection itself. And in the center is an example of one of those entries. All 20,000 works of art are accessible on this website, which means they're accessible to the entire world. And it tells you not only what it is we have, and you can search by artist if you have one in mind, but it also tells you where it's located. And if it's in storage and you want to see it, you can make an appointment to do that. On the far right is one of our very, very important collections, the works of Matthias Alton. We have well over 200 works by this German-born artist. He came here, he got married to a local girl, he had a family, and he was arguably one of the most important, if not the most important painter in West Michigan. So here are 200 of his works of art that you can click on and see at any time. Let's go to the next image. Just more examples of international art, Russian art on the left, Korean in the center, Jamaican textile on the far right. Now, I'm going to end with this last story, the story of Rana Shalabi. Rana Shalabi, a close personal friend, introduced to me by Mark Schaub, who was at one point in charge of all international travel for students. And he knew I was going to go to Egypt. He said, "You must meet my friend Rana." And we did. We all fell in love with Rana, and we invited her for dinner. And she immediately, in turn, invited us to her studio, which happened to be on a houseboat on the Nile. And when we went there as a group, we purchased everything she had. In turn, she came to Grand Valley. She had an exhibition. She went back to Egypt, and her art is on display throughout. Now, where the story, I think it's interesting, during the spring uprising, one of our students, I don't know which student, connected with Rana. She simply found her online, found her by way of Facebook and such, and simply asked the question, "Are you all right?" This was during the spring uprising. One of our students was concerned about an artist she's never met, but whose art she saw and by whose art she was deeply moved. And Rana told me about that at some point and said, it was the most remarkable thing to have a student reach out to me and ask the question. So for me, I think this answers the question, what role does art play in creating global citizens? So thank you, and I look forward to any questions if you have any, and if we have time.
Thank you, Henry. Does Grand Valley have a collecting philosophy?
A collections philosophy?
Yes.
Well, I think the answer is yes. Of course, it changes as we grow as a university. Our collection is primarily of the 20th and the 21st century, with a few early examples from gifts from others. I would hope that we would be open to expanding that as collections might come to us in the future.
We have time for one more question here. Are there any holes in Grand Valley's collection that you'd like to see filled?
Oh my, well, you're, yes, there are holes in our collection that I would like to see filled. I would love to see more contemporary art from around the world. We have a great deal of it. We have very, very generous collectors of contemporary art who have been donating works of art to us at Grand Valley. And it makes a huge difference to exposing students to really cutting edge art. We have a wide range of works of art, but we can always use more.
Okay. Well, thank you, Henry, for that presentation. That was wonderful. That's all the time we have. So Karen?
May I step in just a moment?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to thank Carrie and Jill and Henry and Dan for such wonderful presentations. And you can see why I worry every day about the people, because it's what makes Grand Valley so special. These individuals are leading in such extraordinary ways. And I just wanted to acknowledge them and recognize them. I want to do one more thing. Karen hates when I move off script, but I'd like to ask Melissa and Nora and Nancy and Jill to open their cameras so we can thank them as well for putting today's forums on. Thank you, guys. They many times go unrecognized, but they're here in the background and helping us make sure. Bill Cuppy is here with me, who's our incredible videographer, who also makes things happen every day. If you haven't seen his 60 by 60 videos of the 60 years at Grand Valley, you're in for a treat, and we're releasing them. Jill is one of the featured videos, and so you can hear a little bit about her story. Back to you, Karen. Thank you for letting me interrupt you.
Thank you, President Mantella, and thank you for your leadership. And thank you to all of our great speakers. Interesting and good things to think about it, but don't worry if you didn't catch anything. We're going to send you recordings of these presentations, as well as links on information on some of the topics, so you can dive deeper if you'd like to do that. Thank you again to our friends at Fifth Third. This annual forum would not be possible without your support, and we value your partnership with us. Thank you all for joining us. We look forward to getting together with you when it's safe and comfortable. So have a great rest of your day. Thank you.